pool, and his are older books, but they're in the free domain, so you can find them and download them. You know what I mean? Like if you have a account, for Google Books and stuff, and you go into Google Play, you could get his books for free. You know? They're not nearly as illuminating as Golden Age of the Moor, but they're good that you collect them anyway. Collect them anyway because there's not that much stuff about the Moors. But again, we get the time periods, then we can understand. But that link of what they were studying, that's their link between them and ancient times. Because they were using those Greek documents and extracting the best part.
From what I got from Stolen Legacy, I think it was that one. He made it seem like, was it Destruction? I can't remember which one, but they made it seem like the Moors never left. They never lost that Egyptian culture. They made it seem like they was in the mountains and they always had this, and they went when they went to Spain. They reintroduced it to the
I don't think that's impossible. That pockets of the Moors had some direct roots to Egyptian culture and civilization because
they kept in tune with the Egyptian.
Yeah, I don't think that there aren't pockets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's a majority of pockets that were also analyzing the Greek literature that was left over. Because a vast amount of Egyptian literature was not preserved. The libraries of renamed Alexandria were destroyed by the time they ever come. You know what I mean? So it's going to be preserved through tradition. Just like I mentioned, the Druids, what becomes the Masonic cultures and stuff like that. So things are preserved in that way. But for what the Moors did, the magnitude of what the Moors did, I would say that it's a combination of any and everything, absorbing and collecting as much as they could in their travels. So they were absorbing, but also they were absorbing peoples, but also absorbing information as they traveled. An incredible migration. You could make, if you were able to do it, an incredible study of just the migration of the Moors into Spain. Everything pre-Spain would make for if we could talk about pockets of history that are unknown in detail, that would be a real. How would you go about that? That's the question, man. It's difficult. But watch that documentary definitely. I think I may have Golden Age of the Moor as a PDF, but it's old school. So it's like a PDF that's gonna take mad space, it's like the length of a movie and shit, because it's just people taking pictures of each page, So. But at least you'll have it though, you know what I'm saying? You could go through it, if you were so inclined. Probably something you could read on a tablet, but not on a phone, If you had a tablet, you could read it. And of course the computer, you could read it. But you won't be able to put that on your phone, no. I tried it to reread it again, and it didn't work out too well. I had to zoom, rezoom, move, zoom, But, does that answer your question about that? Yeah. Plus, too, when we started to study, that's why I made the beginner book list, because we'll tend to study stuff and be all over the place because you want to know about all these things, And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes with history, the gaps and what are the gaps and what are the connections, you have to try your best to make them, or else you'll confuse yourself as you go along. It'll be a real problem, Even in 120, there's gaps that you have to put together, and realign. Even the histories of 120 are not written chronologically. Right? They're not written chronologically, so they're not really concerned for that. And of course, you're not going to get that with the Bible either. The Bible there's no fuss about. You understand? It doesn't. So it's really up to you, to put that together and stuff. If you acknowledge what you don't know, then you can build a timeline. But in your journals, as you write about these books, which I hope they use your journals to write about these books or ideas, that you try to make a timeline for these things. Like what's the parts of timelines are missing and stuff like that. Then you can really get a lot out of it. You know? Any questions about anything else? Did I ever email you anything?
Nah, I got to.
Did you email me?
Nah, not yet.
Okay.
You know, I be calculating a lot of shit first. And
You
then
have my email?
Yeah, I got it.
All right.
Well, you building on like how the Moors like every time like you watch the Caucasians going into like different parts, like the Moors were like with them, like
Yeah.
kind of like guiding them all the way through to like
Yeah, they
different.
really carried European civilization, which is nothing. It's a tradition that continues to this day. In all respects, though, of what we do. Most of modern civilization is carried by the African American. And the inventions that we made, like many of the things in this room were invented by African Americans. Right? Doorknobs, toilet bowl, everything. You know what I mean? Spark plugs, right? Steam engine. I mean, these are crucial to today's westernized society. Right? Like without the steam engine being made, you can't really dominate supply and demand. Because now you could bring supply wherever you wanted to go, and you can control demand better. Because you have the power of the supply. You have power over the supply. You know? Karl Marx always said you need to control the means of production. But what happens when you control the means of production? That becomes a product. You also have to control where the product, what you can do with the product, where it can go, who may have it. You know what I mean? Kind of like think like diamonds, though, right? There's a whole bunch of diamonds, but they control it and only release a certain amount, so it's always worthy. It's not just another, rock, as it should be, right? So with things like the steam engine and stuff, it allowed them to transport things worldwide, and it changed everything, and so on and so forth. That's not even the only one invention. But it's a mass amount. So, you gotta think like, if I look up inventions credited to African Americans, then you also gotta figure that might be just 1/4, and I'm being nice, that might just be 1/4 of the things that were invented by African Americans. You know what I mean? What else was invented? And then what was invented during slavery that went unsaid, And we're talking about all types of things, right? Culture, simplicities of culture, right? Because remember, in America, per se, the European didn't build anything. So that means that when he made his homes for himself, he didn't make them so the ease of how a home is built, like the access, the way you make a home. And I will go here. This is here, works here. That works there. You know what I mean? This system of plumbing and drainage will go this way. How was he thinking of that stuff? You know what I'm saying? People think it's a whole bunch of European engineers, the pilgrims, and they're just like, hey, we know how to build everything. Hey, you do this and that. And it's just delegating and shit. How are they delegating though? We just finished Thanksgiving. They didn't know how to plant corn. How are they delegating how a house is built? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. Right? So that culture degree where Musa had to teach him how to build home for himself, apparently this lesson has to be retaught many times throughout history. Right? Because just think about it, that makes no sense. That they were eating their own cadavers when they came here, but all of a sudden when they think like, yo, let's enslave them, all of a sudden they know how to build everything and how to coordinate and coordinate the erection of massive cities. What really is that those slaves that were good folk, the name was of goods to master, then they can speak to them and say, listen, what do you say about this? Because you're my right hand, you're always going to be in this, you're going to be special to this. You know what I mean? You're always going to be with this. Well, how do we do this? How do we organize all this stuff? thing, though. That's why you have to think. During slavery, the greatest asset is the mind of the original people, right? To this day, how did we get all of these exotic berries and herbs from South America all of a sudden? The acai berries and the yerba mate, and all that kind of stuff. When the Europeans today still go to South America and they don't really know how to till the soil. They don't know how to do that. You know? Even when the companies advocate a righteous way of economy with the peoples there, it's still not them doing it. You're not looking at Chad digging, picking acai berries. You know what I mean? You're looking at indigenous people doing that. Right? The quinoa and all these other things. These guys. So all these things have to be taken into account, though, that even to this day, they're still learning how to actually do basic things. Till the soil and things like that. And you can tell what they don't know by the mistakes that they make. Because they have dire consequences. Right? The lack of saving seeds, and then what happens with that. The monocropping of things, right? I forget the name of the documentary, I think it was called Earth or something like that, where they just, the whole documentary about the ravaging of Earth, the last century is the most it's ever been, right? And the entire document is taken from satellite picture over Earth. And of course, only flat earthers would deny this. Right? and you see monocropping of like eucalyptus or whatever, and taking miles and miles and miles of just one crop, And no one thought that this would be good. This wouldn't be good, right? So it's either just like an obsessively blind faith that there's no way that we could die and the earth would let us die so we could do whatever we want with it, or that they just really don't understand the impact of certain things. And I think sometimes it's a combination. I think sometimes it's a combination of that. It really is a combination of that. And that goes into mindsets that we talk about, right? The holistic versus the linear mindset, right? There's a book by an African psychologist. I forget the name of it though. Small blue book, collection of essays. But they make the point that the European has a very linear way of thinking, as opposed to the holistic way of thinking of the African, right? So our people are really African and indigenous, right? When we're studying, we're learning about cultures and the impact of how it works for the whole environment, us, other tribes, whatever it is. They're not thinking like that. It's linear. What happened to us, and then what do we do next? So you don't really get a thing like that, And of course, it affects history, right? So you don't really learn much history. You don't really learn where you came from, all that kind of stuff. It impacts.
And it's also kind of very like capitalistic. Like, how can I profit off of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you don't see the consequences of that profit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right? It's funny that after like 200 years of capitalism, then you see things like, oh, this is a fair trade product. Yeah, that's weird. We talk about like the benevolence of society, like it's so good for the people and shit like that. But if it wasn't for the robber barons wanting to be known as good people like Carnegie at the end of their life, we wouldn't even have libraries. This is one individual that just wanted to be like known as like dope. I don't want everybody to think I'm a son of a bitch at the end, so let's give you these libraries and stuff, give you some books. If he was just like all the others and was like, I don't care what they think about me, got a whole legacy here, it's all good. We wouldn't even have a library. We wouldn't even have libraries. So we can't always talk about ignorance because they know the impact of shared knowledge. They know the impact that this knowledge would be used differently, or that their lack of understanding of the knowledge could also be exposed as well. So there's a lack of understanding with the knowledge that they've kept preserved for themselves also. You know what I mean? So they've been able to use the whole globe, they've been able to advance it technologically, but a lot of the pitfalls they have kept quiet though. You know what I mean? Expecting like, I don't know what, an infinite supply or an unheralded regeneration of the planet, you know? Like it'll regenerate by itself, you know? And it never stops though, like look at fracking and things like that, right? Where they go deep into the ground, affecting, bedrock and things like that, and extracting stuff that causes poisonous, elements to seep into water supplies immediately. And they're like, but it works though. It works, Maybe it's just invent a product of like we wear and shit, and it's so toxic we just all return to the essence and shit. These are high grade sneakers though. They'll make you jump actually 10 feet high. They're a little bit toxic though, because they release a chemical once you step, But they make you jump though, and then we'll be all dead. We'll all be dead. A few done, we'll be happy. But a lot of stuff is like that. You know what I mean? A lot of stuff is like that. I'm saying that though, but most plastics are like that.
Yeah.
That's why when you buy plastics or you buy like water bottles, or if you buy like a plastic that you're gonna keep, like a travel bottle, not like just like a Poland Springs water bottle in the store, but like a bottle that you're gonna travel with, they go PCP free or whatever, like BP free, that, right? Because like 3 years ago, the bottle you bought for travel was toxic. You know what I mean? Because I remember having like, oh man, this bottle, it is kind of like making me. It kind of smells funny. And I've been going to work with this every day. It kind of smells, thanks cancer. You know what I mean? Like, but
And you don't even really pay no mind to okay, it's all right. This is just plastic.
Who takes the brunt of this stuff is usually children. A lot of stuff is outlawed because children start dying quickly. So like a lot of the plastic stuff actually started with children. Because kids, there's no kid that doesn't chew their toy. Not one. Okay, because I know mine. They didn't chew off feet and everything like that. You know what I mean?
Just watching TV, chewing the goddamn doll, right?
You got dolls with like mutated feet. You know what I mean? Like, that's a princess with some ugly ass feet, like Boomerang, like
chewed up feet.
She's a prince. You'd be like, she didn't ruin the feet, but the plastics were toxic, so it's like that. I remember I mistakenly just recently I bought like what's it called, LOL doll, where it's like a surprise doll that you pop up in packaging, and I didn't realize I bought clearly the bootleg one. So when we finally opened it up and the doll was in there, it looked the same because I can't tell the difference. I didn't buy the real one. I don't know what the real one is exactly. But man, that thing was smelling so intense that it was like 3 days later, it was still giving me a headache. And I was like, I gotta get rid of this thing. This thing smells crazy. I'm sorry, I gotta throw this away. I'll get you another one. But so if you're not getting them though, they still, China and them, they still rocking the devilish plastics. You know what I mean? They're still trying to use the devilish materials, So imagine all that. Because all of that is in the ocean, all of that is everywhere. You know what I mean? So it's a fun world. A fun world we're bringing children into.
Like they were saying in the North Pole, how all that ice cap is melting.
Yeah.
And the European countries already have it divided up on what belongs to who. Like what land belongs to the Russians, the Chinese, Denmark. And they just discovered that there's more oil there. So they waiting for all the ice to melt completely so they can extract the oil, man. Yeah, these devils, yo.
Yeah, they're not thinking, no good ideas. No good ideas. It's just 6,000 years of bad ideas. Right?
Things that they think that are good, it's actually really just destructive to the environment and everything.
Yeah, they never think about that, And that's why it's interesting that John West, when he rewrote in a simpler version, a lot of R.A. Schwaller de Lewis' Egyptian architectural books, he spoke about how the Egyptians had a lot of technology that they would not manifest because if it was detrimental to the environment, they wouldn't do it. Contiguous empire, right? In one row of empires that was not broken up by any piece of land. But the thing was, as I was saying, he absorbed and utilized and allowed them to preserve the cultures that they had. So that means that he still kept these societies localized to what they were doing locally. You see, he didn't globalize them. So like the American U.S. taking over Puerto Rico and then Americanizing them, where they even changed their food groups. You know. So like my old Earth would tell me, they were learning about apples and oranges as the food groups, and they didn't even know what that was. You know what I mean? Because they only knew mango and you know the fruits that they have. They're like, there's no apples here. Why is that a necessary food group? Like, if you're teaching food group, eat these fruits. And you're like, ain't there no fruits here? Those aren't here, right? Because they knew that they was gonna change it and make them import it, right? So that then they, the Operation Bootstrap and the destruction of the island, but the colonization of things, right, is imposing the culture you want them to adhere to, as opposed to adapting to the culture that you came into, right? That was one of the major differences of conquering empires of original peoples, which would include the Moors, by the way. Because it's not like the Moors ransacked Spain and started killing, Spaniards and stuff, right? But of course, I can't say that about my man Genghis Khan. He was returning to the essence, but he was absorbing people too. He wasn't killing all of them. But I think that the more, if we spend our time also studying, they don't make a lot of books though about how original peoples, how they actually conquered. If you notice, the Black Books movement and the scholarship of our cultures and histories is very young. And I think one of the mistakes though that we make is that we act like Diop and Sertimo, they did it all. And that's exactly what they were trying to tell us that they did. Their job mainly was to try to get some respect and try to prove that, listen, that we started all this shit. That was their thesis statement. We started this. You know what I mean? So a lot of this stuff was being kept focused on that, and to a detriment that even they talked about was just the beginning. African presence in series of books by Sertimo was supposed to be a beginning. But we need to know how we conquered and how we did it the whole way. How it developed and became this. You know what I'm saying? More insights to how we actually would have lived back then with the massive technology that we had. You know what I mean? And a lot of times it's really just been studied egotistically. Like, I just want to prove that our people were dominant over what y'all doing. So we want to prove that we had pyramids that are massive architectural levels of skill, which is true. But we're not really going into the lifestyle that made them necessary. Because that's true, right? If a society, any society, if they go, Imhotep goes in, I need funding. I'm going to make a building. It's going to last way longer than a solar year, What you need that for? You ain't gonna be here for that. Right? Who's gonna invest in that, right? Like, who's gonna say, look, let's do our time and all this energy and stuff like that? And they're like, who's gonna see that stuff? You know what I mean? I don't care about this, So, the thing is like, the reasonings behind it. And that's what people that haven't gone under the real scholarship are always projecting. And that's also where we can project, a religion off of. Our people were intended to do this. And again, remember I said, when you study cultures before white man existed, please take into account that you have no idea how that's like. So you were reading something that you can only try to imagine and fantasize and empathize with. But you have no idea what it's like to live in a world without white folk. Or be affected by white folk. Absolutely no idea. So how they affected each other, how they separated from each other, how they dealt with each other. You have to realize that you are working to put a different lens on things. Whereas like when you study the Moorish empires, it's a little bit more familiar in scope somewhat. You see? because white folk did exist then, and their conquering ways did exist then. So now it's in combatants with something, right? And like Genghis Khan, and then like I said, that affected his decisions too. You know what I mean? Not because he was scared of Europe, because they were actually European countries he didn't want. He was like, I don't want that shit. Literally, was like, I'm not going there because I don't see the point. And the author is European, so he's not really trying to. He's getting to that point, but he's not really getting to that point. I'm like, yo, there was no benefit for him to take that, and what they don't really know is that during Genghis Khan's time, Europe didn't have any civilization. You cannot conquer a civilization that isn't a civilization yet. You know what I'm saying? It's like if somebody ran with guns and mallets and all types of weapons and took over in 1972 and took over a lot in the Bronx. Like, yo, we took this over. There's nobody there. It's an empty block, you know what I mean? There's no building there. It's empty, you know? You didn't really do much, you know? So it's the same thing, you know? There was nothing really to get from that, you know? So these are also things to consider. So we have to consider, like, what was the meaning. The lessons give you clues, though. They give you clues that they were dealing with ideas of separation, right? They were dealing with seeds of dissatisfaction, where they were discontent, right, with the developments, right? Because sometimes the confusion with dissatisfaction too is that we assume that change is not going on in society. Like there's no change, so then dissatisfaction comes. Dissatisfaction is a particular kind of change that disagrees with this change. But they were making changes, developments, and there were people that were in disaccord with that. They didn't like the way things were going. So why is that taking place? You know what I mean? What leads up to these things, right? Because the reason that I think that a lot of times, like Greek culture is mainly based on like postulating and pontificating forever and theorizing, is because what they studied out of Egypt had a long history of spending long amounts of time studying things. Like, for example, the Pyramid of Giza being an observatory and not completely done for a couple of hundred years, according to Charles Finch and others, right? In The Star of Deep Beginnings and other books, right? Why would you leave it like that? Well, because I guess there's a lot to learn at that moment about the building of it. So the culture of building it. Also too, right, if we're gonna build it, we make a building that's gonna last a solar year, you gotta make it right, right? And it's gotta be right. So that's gonna take a long time too, and it's gonna take a lot of calculation, right? So all these things come into effect, right? But I think that because the Greeks were seeing that once the Egyptian mystery school systems take effect, and some of these early Greeks get in, like Socrates and Pythagoras and stuff, right? They're wondering about all this, and they're kind of getting the way of life that they're coming from, the culture that the Egyptians are coming from, one that ponders over things, spends time. You know what I mean? Because remember, when you spend time thinking about something, there's less of a possibility of doing what? Wisdom, knowledge. Right? If you spend time thinking about an idea, right? Properly, cleverly calculated, that's when you become more potent at actually deciding what you will do. Right? Of course, it could lead to stagnation too. It could lead to both. You know what I mean? But when it's at a perfect, when it's at a perfect peak, it's going to do that. Right? So this is just ideas. You know what I mean? Because again, a lot of stuff I'm saying though, people aren't going back in there and looking at that. We're still at the baby stage where we look at our own people that speak on this, write about this, get degrees on this, still are going to go back into ancient cultures of ours and look for the mystery God. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So if they look at cultures past 6,000 years, to me, I think it's mandatory that you look and see the possibility that they didn't deal with a mystery God. Because that development is taken to another level once the Europeans here. So if I'm studying cultures past 6,000 years, I'm looking to see how they didn't deal with a mystery God. And if you look at most of them, they dealt with an anthropomorphic symbol of what you were expected to become.
Peace.
So that anthropomorphic symbol is what you intend to be. It's almost like, in some ways, like when we make our name. Like remember I tell you, like when you decide your name is like who you think you are and who you will be. It should embody those two things. You know what I'm saying? Right? Because you don't go, look, my name is knowledge, and it's okay if I'm stupid tomorrow. But you're saying this is you now, but this is going to be you in the future. You know what I mean? No, I named myself back in, I was smart then. You know what I'm saying? That was me back then. That's why I call myself knowledge. I'm not that. I don't read anymore. That was then, It's not basketball. It's not a sports career where you retire from, And I was smart in those years as a 5%, though, My prime was good, It was really building, Feels like that sports career, man. But, if we look at history like that, now when you go back in history, look at those things. I'm telling you, it makes a world of difference, though, because we assume so much stuff. Again, the first thing is the utopia stuff, We tend to look at ancient history and build the utopia, Right? We all wore Ralph Lauren dashikis, and everybody had the same thing. Everybody wore dashikis. Every single person in ancient Egypt wore that thing, Nobody thought of like a legging, jeans.
And sandals and shit, right?
Yeah, sandals. Of course, sandals.
Sandals.
You know what I mean?
Open toe.
Yeah, open. Yeah, open. Yeah, no doubt. You know what I mean? They might have had the early air, you know what I mean? Put air in sandals. EVO comfort technology in there, right? You never know. It's possible. But you'd be surprised when you study ancient Egypt and stuff, the amount of innovative things that they made, like products and things like that. Like they had suntan lotions, all that kind of stuff. They had really contraceptives. They had all types of stuff. It's really, It's a real society, and it's because of us always being put in a reactionary position that even our scholarship is reactionary. And I'm saying, like, when you look at this stuff, look at it like, yo, I could learn this, but I also could go to school and study this and add on to this field. That's how I want you to look at it. Like, you could actually go into this and get into those things and see different things. Diop didn't know the black man was God. In fact, some of these scholars probably never even had the idea that man is God. It is very possible. We know Chancellor Williams didn't. Right. He's a Christian. He wrote in Destruction of Black Civilization, I gotta say, I think Jesus Christ is, there's no proof that he was black, and I say that he was, all things point to him being European. I was rebellious when I read this book. I almost threw it in the trash. But it was near the end of the book, so I said, let me finish this shit.
Let's finish this shit.
Yeah, I was like, you know what I mean? But,
Start screaming at the author, what the fuck are you talking about?
I was. In my journal, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? But the thing is, though, is that their perspective goes into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Their perspective, just like cosmologists that study the origins of the universe, they go atheist because they're like, yo, it's just too precise. I learned this recently, but there's an actual name. Let me see if I can find it real quick. But remember I was talking about how, like, scientists say that the structure of the universe and, like, the planet Earth, the sun, is so precise that it just can't be, like, sporadic or some mystery God just put it together like that. It's so precise that they have a name for that. That's how particular it is. So in a book I read, I was suggested for Lord Jamal. It's called Gravity. I had to do that. Remember, it's one for all for one.
Shit, man.
I'm here all night.
Yo, did you see the shit that Uni put where he was going at Lord Jamal?
Wait, who's going on?
Universal was going at Lord Jamal, and it's like, he had took a couple of clips where, we said, well, I can't teach it that way, and about cipher being at the beginning, he has to be cipher knowledge as opposed to knowledge born in cipher. This is what Lord Jamal said. Like, he says that cipher has to come before knowledge. You know, so no, it was just like a joke video where he was just joking on him
Oh damn.
and
Yeah, I don't know. I had come up to this revelation recently because remember I say, and I always said that in the mathematics we say that culture, freedom, power, uh, when you put the refinement there or build it, I had the parentheses there.
you know, he said it's a supplemental word.
Yeah, and I still see that like that, but not the parentheses. I changed it to the way it was. The reason I said it is because when we look at the 120, we don't change it unless the Father changed it. And we deal with it as is. Grammatical errors, whatever, right? If I see or as a grammatical flaw, it's a flaw that was already understood that the Father wrote in. You see? I think my issue, and I'm going this briefly because there's a long ass build to it,
Yeah.
but I don't see the refinement in the power.
Oh
Because
shit.
The only way that would work was
The
if
power
I,
and
if I redefined refinement. So refinement, and again, a lot of this has to do with my understanding of words.
right.
Refinement can also mean focus. And to me, power is naturally focused. The black man doesn't live a culture that it just is spread out sloppy. His power is always focused. Right? But when you study mathematics and what the Father gave, it was in accordance though to go immediately with 120 lessons. And so the meaning of refinement though is the way it links with 120 lessons use of it. And that's cultured refinement. Refinement meaning a culturing of that. You know what I mean? So if I say this though, this is, let's say as a side note, this explains it. I say, when someone says that the devil's stuck at equality, the devil is not at equality. The devil's not dealing equally with anything. So technically he's not in equality. He's stuck at equality. So this is equality and he's here, it's door. So refinement itself can't be dealt with once you already are in power. Power already has to be there as is. You see? So we don't reach power and then we're working on power. Power is. And that's one of the points though.
That's a Medina point.
Yeah.
That's
And the reason it was always muffled to me is because when people say power is the truth, it's too generic for me. Because technically you could say anything is the truth. We could say knowledge is truth. Wisdom, because it's based on knowledge, is truth. Any understanding is truth. Culture is truth. You know what I'm saying? Sunez is truth. You know what I'm saying? Things like that, right? The thing about it, right, is that it didn't hold for me because it's too universal. It's too broad-based. You know what I'm saying? We could say God is the truth. Right? That's not wrong. Right? So it was too broad-based for me. But the idea is, the reason these mathematics are separated is to focus on those different principles. For me to accept refinement, I had to change the meaning. You see? And now I have to counter-teach, which takes away the teaching simplicity of the tool. And I had to learn that through the experience though, because the students that I'm teaching, they still would define refinement the way I wasn't. They still would define refinement as a culturing. You know what I'm saying? And not focus.
well.
Right.
I mean, well, how are you defining refinement? Like, 'cause I mean, as I know, refinement is to break
The
down
only way
the
it
three
fit
impurities.
as power refinement was without the or, because it doesn't go or. It doesn't go either or, and it doesn't go together. You see what I'm saying? It only goes together though by fixing one of the other one. You see? So it's awkward in there. It only goes if refinement means focus. The problem with that is that use of the term is not in 120. So it is not in the immediate dialect of us. So I'm teaching an additional definition, which isn't wrong, but it's not in there. See?
So is it safe to say you've taken refinement out of your mathematics?
It's the reason that or is grammatically incorrect in the first place.
Yeah.
Because
yes.
culture or freedom works for me. Build or destroy works for me. And when I was building with the God about this, the God divine about this,
Which
I
is
was
divine?
like, yeah.
Divine? Okay. Architect divine? Or?
The God that does graphics, right?
Oh, okay. Oh, the one that does the shirts.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, because now I have to alter what the Father put down to make sense out of something that was added that not even all of Medina had.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mecca had. You know, obviously Medina had. Mecca, you know what I'm saying? So, not everyone in Mecca had it. And technically, here's another thing that's really like mind-blowing to me. The gods that tell this story say that the Father saw something in it and said, you don't have refinement in your power. That does not mean, though, that they had to fix their power. It means that you had to fix the concrete aspect that caused you to have power that was not refined. You had to fix your culture, your way of life, so your power was right and exact.
Right.
See? For example,
Yeah.
some of these things are concrete and some of these things aren't. If somebody says that your wisdom is wrong, right? The only way to fix your wisdom, though, is to fix the knowledge that you have. Correct it. What knowledge do you have that you're wisdoming wrong? So technically, you're not just fixing the wisdom. You have to go to the root of it.
Right.
The root of fixing, when he told them your power doesn't have refinement, or it needs refinement, it means that their culture was wrong. Because how do you know a person's power is wrong? Because you're seeing their culture. You know what I'm saying? This is not cartoon comics though. We're not seeing energon, like coming out of the individual. We're seeing their way of life.
How they doing? How they applying it?
Well, what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing what they're doing. You're seeing someone's culture. Like, that's not the culture. You know what I mean? Your power's not refined because you're exuding yourself incorrectly because your culture is coming from the wrong place. So even still, they would have to go back to the root of the culture. And that's why I likened it to the concept of the devil stuck in equality. His power is being misused. Because his culture has an ulterior motive. See how we have to go back to roots. If you get to the stuck degree, you have to get the stuck degree that the Father noticed was power. They have to go back to culture. Because they know better. And they weren't acting better. They weren't doing their culture. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So this just popped up to me when he was saying that, He said, because he was saying, why am I changing something the Father gave? That's not what I want to do. That's not what I should be doing. You see? And if the Father puts something in there that is grammatically incorrect, it's not new, but brings rain, hail, snow, and quakes is wildly grammatically incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? There'll never be, I can't find an instance where you're regularly saying speech. Yeah. But brings rain, hail, snow, and quakes. It's not going to happen though, you know what I'm saying? Only in the context of what he was saying though. You know what I'm saying?
There you go. All right, bro.
Right?
Sorry to interrupt the class, the instructor.
Absolutely.
How's everything?
Everything's peace, guys.
Oh man.
See,
Yeah, how's everything?
good, guys. Right?
So that's a win for Medina.
It is a win for me. Yeah.
Oh, you see here Medina in the background. Oh, yeah.
They're slamming it down, you know what I mean? But the thing is though, is that I just think that here's the problem, right? In all the history that we learned about supreme mathematics and its making, was that it was something that they spent years, months and days going back and forth, the Father. You see? And it seemed to me like one instance led them to add something to it, and it was premature. You see? And that adding of refinement, also the nature by which it was added is completely premature compared to the way everything else was modulated and decided. You know what I mean? And the more I thought about it, I was altering the grammar and the definition that we would use for it to fit it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, that defeats the whole unity of what the Father gave us. Because the framework for him making mathematics, though, were the definitions and the dialect of words that were in 120 lessons. That dialect is what he used to shape how he would articulate supreme mathematics. That's why, like Muslims, they say, "Oh, you come with mathematics from our stuff." No, he's using the dialect, what the words mean, and his understanding that comes from these words and these ideas and these new teachings to come up with supreme mathematics.
Was refinement always in the knowledge God degree? Like,
From what I know, yeah.
And that's the fifth tenet of the Nas God degree.
Right. You know what I mean? And so I think that's why it was like, oh, it'll be the fifth. You know what I mean? We'll put it in the fifth. But they didn't think about it. It's completely reactionary, not thought out. You see? But I think as a teacher of young men, the father wanted to see some kind of results first. Results, he's very results driven. If you look, when he says "but brings rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes," it's really a way to lambast the student. Because every time he asks them for something, this is what Firstborn Prince told me, every time he asks them for something and they didn't do it, it was like but, and so the father often answering with degrees would say, "But brings rain, hail, snow, and earthquake." So a lot of the teaching of the father was about be about stuff, do the work, come up with results. When I was there, we were changing the actual facts, right? And that last actual fact with the proper square inches as opposed to inches, because there's no such thing as inches on a round figure, right? And that figure that they used was made up by multiplying wrong two different things, like multiplying yards and inches. You know, they multiplied inches by square inches, which is not real math. It's not actual math. You can't do it. You know what I mean? It's like multiplying meters and miles. Like, so you'll get a number, but it doesn't mean anything. And I asked Firstborn Prince, like, how did they leave it wrong this long? You know what I'm saying? And he was like, well, they worked as hard as they could with it, and so it was a good try to begin. Like, he wanted to see results immediately, and he felt like the next generations would fix that as they got more educated, right? Because remember, what was one of the goals of this being a street academy was it being a street academy, an official licensed academy that was designed to get dropouts the amount of education they could to get into college. That's what this building was originally given, like, the function. That was the major function of the building in the beginning when it was given to him. So his goal was always like for them to be results driven, positive results driven. So it was okay to have some type of error, because to be right and exact, you have to actually make a mistake to get the lesson. Like you can't be, you're not right and exact though if you never do anything. So you got to get out there and do something. You know, make a mistake. Go try a trick. Just like in the classroom, right? You never really become a good student if you don't say some outlandish, crazy idea and say, "Hey, Sunez, what about this? You know, what if it was like this? You know, kind of like some students that keep doing it."
Like you beat me up that time.
Right? If this is not, if a classroom is not the laboratory of the student, then he can't become a scientist in life. You know what I mean? Because then he'll explode things outside. It's good to explode them in the classroom. You know? It's good to, this is where you're supposed to make mistakes. You know what I'm saying? Right? And it has detriment though. You know what I mean? And even as you see, like what I was saying about what I was doing, even the teacher goes through experiments. Right? Experiments in teaching and pedagogy and ideas. You know what I mean? And that's why in every step of the way, he has to catalog and explain the details of why he is doing certain things as a teacher. So that way, even if he missteps, it can become a greater lesson and not more confusion. You know what I mean? Right? And this is why I always tell you, like, you have to have your own journal and you have to catalog how you deal with this knowledge from the very beginning and how it changes what your perspectives are, how you see things, what is bugging you, what are the revelations that you come up with that, you know, that make sense or are causing more questions. right? It's important. It's important. A scientist is based on his questions, not his answers. You never opened up a science book because you know I know all the answers to this stuff. Well, sometimes it would. Actually, that's how you open up a book. They all say that. But the good scientists, the good science text, they propose questions at the end. Right? We talked about Sertima. All his books have all the introductions. They propose future scholarship. Like, what are we missing here? What could be done? What could we add on? You know, that nature is to me the nature of a thinker. You know, the question is the key. You know?
Is that something that is possible with the lessons in regards to the lessons not being able to be changed or?
But that's the whole thing.
You know what I'm saying?
That's why the discrepancy was, because I'm here, I could grammatically fix mathematics, but we're not doing that with 120. This is what the Father came with. This is what Elijah came with. See? When the Father made the changes, they were crucial because we're the gods. We're the earths. These are our documents, and they can't have pronouns that assume that they're not about us. That was the main driven reality of change, is the pronouns, right? But as we learn them, we learn to learn them as they are and get the understanding. So instead of trying to fix it to what we think it might be, we spend our time getting an understanding of them. You see? Because what should be fluctuating, what should be changing, is how you challenge yourself and the understanding of them. Instead of fixing old documents. See? Leave those documents as they are, because while you're fixing them, you're not making your own documents, your own ideas. See? And that's where bastardization would come in, you know? And that's what I wasn't applying though. Something I've talked against so much. Because if you're not writing your own insights, right? What you tend to do is start to fix out the insights of others. And that also blurs history as well, which also causes the ability of future generations to pull insights, because you're skewing the history, right? That's why not everything should always be skewed, right? We shouldn't fix those Disney movies. This is the real point of this whole thing. They should all contain their racist elements, right? Peter Pan and all that, right? That wasn't it. That was side note. Does that make sense? I went into that whole riff because it was. I don't know if that all makes sense.
I just see the soldier in the father. You know how the soldier, as he has the warrior mentality, and then it's a safe environment for you to make a mistake.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's an environment where you can make a mistake, and you can get nurtured, and you can say, you know what, you're there, or maybe you need a little bit of work to do. Because when you start looking at the core of it, the whole 120, to me, it just, when I look at that, when I do my own archive of history, it's like, all I want to do is just save these neighborhood kids. They kept bringing their friends, then bring their friends. It's like, damn, I got this problem, I got this problem, I got, shorty, read this, quote this, read it. Now you got this whole file on it, and it just started with this, I just want to see these kids safe. I want to see them be something. Then I got this whole, now it just, you can't just do one. Now if I do something, if this, like, your wordsmith. I'm not a wordsmith. I'm more of a man of action. I'm a warrior. So warriors think a little bit, we want to fight, battle, whatever. But at the same time, when I dance with you, it's like, dude, I can do the same thing, but we end up building with each other. It's more like, it turns into a brothership and a fellowship. Because like, have you read this? I ain't read that. Then you give me a book I read, I said, oh damn. Now I see why he used finesse on this. The father has that warrior mentality where it's that, because we're Asiatic, right? Mind and body. Let me get this right. Then let me work on everything nice and slow. Because even when we do the math, and we do the alphabet, if you really look at the alphabets, you have to develop your own alphabet. The A has to be accountability. You have to develop your own alphabet as you walk your own journey, because now it's the knowledge of yourself. It's just like when, I don't know, as an instructor, I always liked how you were able to, each student, grab the interest and then keep the focus of the class. You know what I mean? I just always enjoyed that about your classes.
That's peace, God. You know, I think that for me teaching now, I think the individual is more sedentary now. You know, y'all a bunch of lazy young kids. I'm saying that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying though is that the culture is more sedentary. You get lost though in doing nothing without going anywhere and doing something. If you wanted to do something that was worth less, you still would have to go outside and do it. You know what I mean? That's not always the case now. You know what I'm saying? So it begins from a more introverted position. You know what I mean? So it's different environments though. But I think that the father was very results driven. That's, you know, he was really trying to get results out of them, and he was protecting their future. So he was trying to protect their future by having them rooted in doing something that would leave them okay in the future, you know? And by leaving them okay in the future, it also would be a building block for families, you know? And I think that he was proven correctly. You know what I mean?
Hence, second generation, right?
Yeah, it's the second generation, you know what I mean? You know, and he was teaching a generation of kids that had no idea what family even looked like. Like on that level, like they don't really know, like they don't know what the actual role of a parent is and things like that. You know what I mean? You know, the parenting that they do have is not explained, so it's authoritarian. You know what I mean? You do as I do, and then all of a sudden, if you get this knowledge, you're like, but you're making me do stuff that doesn't make sense, so, and it's authoritarian, so it doesn't matter. You have to do it, you get out. So now, that's not really parenting, you realize. You know, it's not parenting. You have to listen to the child, especially when the transition that most parents are not. Most parents, and if they were, and parents as us as children, they're not so good as teenagers, and they're not even, and because they're not good with being parents of people that will transition and be adults. Let alone people being parents of actual adults, which is another story, right? But these are the things that the father was much more akin to because he's a good listener. You know what I mean? There's never an older God that met the father though, that for some reason though, how did he know all these stories? Well, they're not really always saying it though, but the father was listening to where they were coming from. What they were saying, what they were doing, like how did they get like that? You know? I think even the older gods, they mystify it, like he just knew where I was coming from. You know, young people sometimes don't realize how much they say of themselves in the moment. You know, so they might tell the story in the future and say like he just knew what I was about and stuff. And
You
that's a young student that doesn't blab everything in their life immediately. You know what I'm saying? If the student is between like 15 and 20, they've already told me their whole rap career. That hasn't gone up, but they've done, you know, or like everything they've done in the park. And if they're younger, for sure, like, you know, like they say everything once you get them going. So he's watching, he does the knowledge to them, you know what I mean? And that's something that is also something that is not really noticed about it, you know what I mean? It gets mythologized, you know what I mean? The legend of Allah, you know what I mean? Like, I was there one day and he just said, "You shall deal with this," and he just echoed a degree. You know what I mean? Like, but brings rain, hail, snow, earthquakes, and we were like, "Oh my God!" You know, that's not exactly how it was. He just was really keen on doing the knowledge. You know what I mean? And seeing how they interacted.
Now, that just reminded me like an excerpt from the book, the Gods and Herbs that was there, and I think it was Sealah's chapter when he realized he wanted to change his name. He was coming from Medina, he was going to Mecca to go tell Allah, and he said when he saw him, he said that would be your name, like that would be your name. He's like, oh, I was gonna say that, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean the times he may have seen him, there may have been things that he just saw, and mind you, the father he clearly had great memory and memory for individuals. Like he's a real people person because he could remember different things about people. You know what I mean? So that's another thing that like you have to see like that, and that's a gift. It's a real gift to remember certain things about individuals at all times. Teaching this class all these years though, I try to take as many notes as possible to remember about all y'all. You know what I mean? Because it matters like where you're at, what you're dealing with, you know? That shapes the pedagogy of the individual. You know, not necessarily
you giving a script, curriculum, but shaping something, you know? Even the curriculum I give is adaptive and really just like a shell of a curriculum that, you know, builds for each individual differently, you know? With many similarities that will, you know, join everyone, right? But yeah, all those things, you know? Because, God, we're all teaching a warriorship here, right?
Mhm.
We are oppressed. We are not only in our lives, but also in the thought process. Because even with this new thought process, this becomes an added thing that is oppressed. Like, man is God, and there is no God in the sky or some abstract being, energy, or force that controls reality. So that already, now, even if we say, I have knowledge of self, I'm never oppressed anymore. I don't know where you come with that, but like I'm totally free. I've reached, you know, nirvana. But the reality is though is that you're still dealing with them. You know what I'm saying? You're still dealing with outside forces. You know, so it still is confrontation. If anything, you still deal with confrontation, right? If someone doesn't deal with your way of life, though, if you tell enough people, you will have confrontation. You know, people will try to confront with you, either, you know, physically at the worst, but at least try to spar with you to see, you know, how they could show you that you're wrong and everything like that. You know what I mean? And then try to prove the unprovable with you. You know, because that's what they're doing. They're proving a negative. You know, because to say God did something that's outside, it's like the mystery God did this. That's the same way of saying nothing did this. Zero did this. Like, you don't know. You can't prove something doesn't do something. You know, or something that you can't find did something. It's impossible. You know, it's such a good idea to impress the people with, right? That idea. You know? But anyway, yeah.
I just think it's easy when you say, I'm from the action, speak louder than words. That's how I am. If you never looked at 120, if you never looked at the Supreme Alphabet, if you never looked at, and you just seen this individual dealing with youth, it's enough. Like, what is your interest in these kids? Do I just want to see them do better than where they at? And then I have this academy. Now, me coming from the academy field, the police field, the academy, you have your law instructors, you have your police science instructors, you have your physical fitness. You know what I mean? And then here is the same. The 120 takes you to the same thing. You have diet, you have history, you have law. You know what I mean? You have these whole sciences, but it also comes from that same thing with the military regiment. It has these components in it, but the main component that it really has in it, which makes, to me, it just makes it look like he has a bleeding heart. Like, dude, how can I look at these kids? I know I have the potential to bring them out and lead them the way they are. That's like the call. That's like the duty that he wrestles with. Like, I got this knowledge. I got 4 or 5 kids in front of me. If I just have a simple conversation with them, son, don't do that. You're gonna break your mama's heart. You don't know my mother? Dude, I have a mother. You know, and he make that relation, and then he segues it in. You know what I mean? Then all of a sudden, like, yo, did he say that to you? Yeah, they need to have you quote this thing. I don't even know what the hell I'm quoting. And then I came back and see him another day, and I told him, I said, sorry, my mother. Or I told my mother we shouldn't eat pork anymore. That's like the dying is like the hardest one. You know what I mean? Because anywhere you go right now, it's gonna be ham. You know what I mean? Everything got ham in it, pork in it. And you imagine just me, I haven't had pork since I was about 12 years old. Next year I'll be 40. Coming from a heavy black and the American black and then Hispanic household, where at this time of year ain't nothing but pork.
You're getting all types of.
You can't eat I'm eating rice and just rice. Maybe some chicken, you know what I mean? Put ketchup in. And they're like, yo, Ronnie, you don't want this? And I'm like, nah, I can't eat that, I can't. And they just, the grandma's like, well, everybody's gonna eat, you're not gonna eat. So I would have to take the stories that my grandmama know. All right, she's super Christian. Grandma, the story of Daniel. Daniel him and his boys, they couldn't eat the stuff when they went with the king, right? I can't eat that here, Mom. Oh, okay, all right. And then she'll let it ride. And then she'll say why. Then you're forced to give a class on why you shouldn't eat it. And grandma's like, well, I'm not gonna make it that much anymore. You know what I mean? They still have their resistance is still in them. They're not gonna make it that much anymore. Because now they see that out of all my grandchildren, this one is not fat. This one wants to read. This one, now they started the action part is where they're like, Mira, he's a God. I don't know what the God is, but he's the God, right? And it's like, okay, and they just, and because they're looking at the overall shape. Now you're reading. Now you're not failing in school. You're actually doing pretty well. Now the people are looking at you as the leadership. Now you're telling your friends, hey man, we shouldn't do this. Now you have more of a morality thing to you. And then they started like, oh, that's in the 120? If you read it, you know what I mean? You get that. If you really, really read it and get that, it's there. But it all started from a man who just said, son, how about you clean yourself up? You know what I mean? If you didn't do it, son, how about you clean yourself up? And let me just take you there. And then this is how he got it. And it's just, but now here's, if you want to go to the next level. Like the guru, you want to go to the next, like when you beat me up, Ron, you want to go to the next level? Write, read, and you're gonna probably suck at it at first. I'm like, really, Sunez? Yeah, you know you are. I'm telling you are. You're gonna be bad at it, right? And then as you keep doing it, you see those mistakes. When you tell me like, yo, Ron, you're gonna see those mistakes, and you'll get your heart broken, and you'll get mistakes, and then the eureka moment's gonna come.
Right.
Then it's like, I got it. You know what I mean? But you had to come here. I think I'm pretty intelligent. But when you beat me up that day, I was like, oh, my heart, my ego couldn't handle it. But I had to come back and say, look how he came with it. He's like, yo, it wasn't. I mean, I got my feelings hurt that day, but and
I can tell because he's talking about it. Like,
I got my feelings hurt that day, but it was more like, if you really want to see your potential, you're gonna sometimes gotta go down before you go up. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, my ego got, oh man, and I said, well, no, I can't take it like that.
Not the police.
No, it's the man.
Not the police.
It's the man, right? Because the man is.
Always wanted to tell police.
But it's the what is the core of it, right?
Right.
So I'm talking as soon as said, listen, how do you compromise safety? I said you can't compromise safety. Build off of that, because the last thing you want is the people who are in charge of safety to not want to do it anymore. And I go, you got it? I said, yeah, that's my approach now. Because if safety is it, you don't want the guys who are supposed to put their lives on the line and compromise them, don't want to do it anymore because of whatever. Find that opposition, work your way through it, see what it is, see what they, and I start saying, you know what? They're lacking the things that majority is like. They're not reading, they're not getting understanding, they're not looking at the potential and the faults and stuff like that. And I go, wow, I had to get beat up like we always do when we come here. Right? I had to get beat up, I had to get, kind of like, you regeared me. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, you got that assessment. Then start doing it. Then the people start saying, wow, Ronnie is different. He's really hitting his stride. Then when I became an instructor, I hit you with that, I say, yo, dude, they want me to teach. They want me to whatever, right? And I go, it's all because Sunez beat me up that day. And it was, relentless. It was like, really? Like, you, how dare you, right? And then when you came, I was just like, and I had to take it in. And it was just like I always gonna be grateful to you for that. You know what I mean? Always gonna be grateful to you because it was that you come in like, yeah, I got no 120, I know this, and then the senior guards, the polished guards are like, you need some more refinement, son. And the refinement is not always a bad thing. Try this, do this, take it in. I'm like, and you know me, I like books, even though you're the digital guy. And I said, well, what is something that you do? And I know that this is coming. I read all my books again in the new year start. I said, how am I gonna do that, right? So I just take the smallest books I got, and I run through those, and it gets bigger, and by October, I'm now like those heavyweight books, the thinker books. And I said, oh, this is his regiment, but the last 2 years I've done it, I got different understandings from it. You understand? When you get the different understandings?
Yeah.
As a novice is one thing, and then as I started doing it, I picked up other things. Started picking up more things like, is it safety, is it health, is it morality, is it orderly? Right? And then the whole subjects are changing, like the 8 directions, right? Okay, if I'm going this way, how am I gonna focus on it? If I'm meeting opposition, how am I gonna focus on it? And I was just like, man. But it all started with this one man who just saw kids that he couldn't see them, like, I mean, think of the era. Drugs everywhere. Recession. You know what I mean? And he walking down the street polished and just, and you're looking at you end up, this way you pick your team. You know what I mean? You could be 10% take advantage of them. Or you could be the 5% that says, I ain't gonna make no money out of this shit. I ain't gonna get nothing out of this. But what do I get? I get to see these kids.
Yeah, and in those times it was very common to rally the youth, under the guise of Black Power or revolution or anything like that, And of course, blood-sucking religions and cults and factions and all kind of stuff, you know. But the beginning is that I think that he really understood what he learned out of those lessons that he took from the mosque. He actually understood them. So he was comfortable to speak on them as one of them. Where it speaks about God, I am God. I can speak about it as God because I understand what's in it. You know what I mean? So he was studying from a point of actualizing it from the get. This is what I think. But going out and teaching the youth and dealing with the youth like that, a lot of that is because I think the success of that is always because of the ability to listen. You know? Because what you find more and more with every elder that had an interaction with the father is that he had a great protocol for them. And the protocol for them was always particular, which is the sign of a great teacher. You know what I mean? A great teacher always knows exactly like what you should do, what you should try and stuff like that. And it's experience though. It's experience, you know? So I find it miraculous. I find it miraculous because when I come here to teach, I had a wealth of teachers to guide me on how to teach. You know, I don't know where he, you know, who's doing that for him on that level. You know? Because where he comes from, out of the Nation of Islam, that's not even suggested that they even teach that manner or those young people like that. So everything he's doing is wildly experimental, you know? So he's just, so you know, it's when you reach those moments in history where people find out a massive gift that they have, they expose it, and it just happens to be that no one's really done that at that time. You know what I mean? So it becomes pioneering as well, you know? But the thing is though, the real gift though, if you really look at it, for the individual to not make it mysterious, is that what he really was exposing was the ability of the student to find their own flaws. And that's the real gift of supreme mathematics because they were supposed to use it on themselves. To look and say, I create something. That's the proof of creating. Everything goes through mathematics. So if you think you don't create stuff, look at everything that happened to you and how it goes through mathematics. Then you can see that it wasn't mysterious and that you had a hand in it. So then now you know you have to create using mathematics beforehand. See? So now that student alone is thinking, I am creating things as we speak. I better go check, see what type of power I have within myself. You see? And while the father's not there, there's a great amount of self-repair that's going on with either the memorization of things because the self-esteem, just the mental framework is changing because they keep calling themselves God, Supreme Being. Right? The idea of building something is changing because everyone is challenging themselves. So before you get there, you want to be ready for challenges, which changes the mentality of a person. You know what I mean? It's like if, you know, like when you go train in martial arts, or like when you go train with your Sigung and your brothers in training, you kind of got to get ready because you know, like, I got to take some blows, I got to get ready to give some, I got to be sharp. I can't just be eating some junk food because I'll be slow, right? So now you're a little bit sharper. So they're going into the cipher already sharp. But they're also going into as advanced students because by being sharp, what they don't know that they're doing is that they actually came not with things to do, but they came with what? Experiments to check in that laboratory. And while they think they're coming prepared to build, the teacher, that teacher, in this case we're talking about the father, knows that they're going to come with things that are going to be filled with right and wrong. So he says, that's what you came with? Okay, here's what's this, what's that. And now you can mold them and say, do this, do that, this is what you missed, this is what you didn't. And now he has a perfect learning environment. You know what I mean? Whatever cipher he has is learning environment. Even the language, he labeled it so the learning environment can happen immediately.
So if there's 2 people, that's a cipher already. So he's already labeled the learning environment. And the learning environment can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to happen in the classroom only. So he's changing their perception. So now for brothers like with 2 brothers in the street and they might be thinking let's do some shit, but no. Me and you are together. So we're in a learning environment already. Because we're in a cipher together. Like we're in cipher 2 wisdom deep. Right? So now everything is a learning cipher. The classroom is going everywhere. So now they're thinking they're a student 24/7. Because he's already labeled all of life a classroom now. You see? So like, I don't know, it sometimes feels like perfect storm, the way all these things just came to be just really great. You know what I mean? And you gotta think that you have to give credit, because if he taught that these young brothers were God and are God, the truth of the matter, what makes it a perfect storm is that they actually are God. You see? Because this thing doesn't work though if his students suck. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? You don't think that this is the first time a man has realized that man is God and has tried to teach people and it just goes awry? There are countless Chinese texts. There's a lot of Chinese texts where they actually say not to teach people their supremacy on certain levels because their ego will become too high. It doesn't say teach them that they God and stuff like that. It just teach them like supremacy and stuff. And that's why like a lot of Chinese teachers in Kung Fu, they always talk about, and you see it in the movies, it comes out in the movies, they're like, don't teach all the techniques, you know, they're trying to kill me, you know, like, they don't teach all the things, they keep the 35th chamber closed up, you know what I mean? They keep those chambers though, like, you know, you can't learn this weapon, you're not ready, you know, and like, I'll tell you do it anyway, and then, you know, he starts killing, you know. And what in the movies though? In the movies, the one that becomes evil actually masters the weapon. He didn't need them to not let him use the weapon. Right. So it wasn't about teaching, it was about the way he was going to use the weapon. See? Because they grabbed the weapon against the teacher's wishes and they used that shit kind of nice. Right? The teacher didn't want to teach anything, he was blood-sucking. But he was teaching them how to use everything as a tool, and when they were ready, they were ready. But what the Father devised was supreme mathematics. I say it all the time, it's just massive genius, because it allowed them to have a teaching tool that was being applied though just by living things, living life, going through experiences, and it turned every single happening into a life experience. Because mathematics separates creation, right? This is the knowledge part, the wisdom part, the understanding part. It allowed them to take every moment of life and be able to slot it into a part and get some intrigue into it and some insight. That's powerful. You know what I mean? So it's like the teacher with the perfect teacher with the perfect curriculum. And he just ran through everything, because all of the ancients never had, they were always trying to protect something really difficult to learn. But he had simplified the most difficult part. You know, he simplified the 36th chamber. You know what I'm saying? He simplified the hardest part, so now everything could be taught. So now it's not a problem. The people that wouldn't learn it, they're the ones that aren't God. See? So technically, whatever flaws, like we say, like the nation didn't do this, it doesn't do that, there's not enough gods. The truth is that everybody that encountered this teaching, we learned whether they were God or not. The ones that ain't got it, that shit taught you that they weren't God. What'd you learn? You not in this nation no more? Nah. Well, you learned you're not God. It's good teachings.
You know what's funny? When I was like as a kid trying to teach my mom and stuff like that, she was good with 1, 2, 3, full of shit about Jesus. She's like, you can do the I God thing, right? 5, 6, 7, I'm okay with. 8, I'm okay. Even 9, I'm okay with. Even 9, but 4, I'm about my Jesus. And I'm like, all right, mama, all right, go ahead and do the Jesus. And she was like, that was like that culture degree. I started noticing that's the hardest one when dealing with others, because They can deal with the 1, 2, and 3. Now it's really understand because it's sequential, it's methodical, it's even logical.
Yeah.
But now you're dealing with the other part. You know what I mean? Where you can't put math for certain things. Like, no, baby, I'm about Jesus. All right, mama. All right. Oh, okay. So after Sunday, we're gonna do something else, right? Yeah. And then that's her culture, her way of life. You know what I mean? It was like, all right. And I had to compromise a little bit.
Of course.
It was like, because I still want to eat.
It wasn't for them, man.
You know, I still want to eat food. I still want to get my clothes or whatever. And what happens is that, baby, if that's your thing, I don't mind it because she would say things that would connect. I judge a tree by the fruit it bears. So if that stuff is giving you grow fruit, then you would go ahead and do it. You know what I mean? All my mother, go ahead and do it. You God, go ahead. Whatever that is, go be it. And then they will respect it because now what happens is that look at the decisions you start making. The friends start hanging around. They start looking at the result and they're like, that's for him.
It actually should change your culture when you get this knowledge, you know?
It has to.
Yeah.
It has to.
But it's funny because my older, she would always, when I explained it to her, first time I explained it to her, she was like, well, you saying that black man is God. I'm God because I did everything for you. That was it. I did everything for you. And I was like, I didn't have an answer for that.
Because the logic is too strong. The woman's logic. Because I was like, when I deal with mothers on a daily basis, I've noticed that I've seen like the mother's love is unconditional. They're gonna provide for their kid, regardless of what. I don't care what they do. They're gonna provide, and I see them doing more than a man.
Whatever we want, we could have said I'm this, I'm Superman in stick form. You know, like they didn't care. Like I said anything.
Superman, how come you didn't take a bath there, Superman? Superman, you got to look out. Superman, they will get
It's part of the joke, but they can still let you call it. They're just gonna make fun of you.
Because the woman always, they have to.
But yeah, it's the same thing. And if you guys like you knew with this now, once especially your parents and stuff, once they see the positive changes in your life and the things that you do and the potency of how you do things, then they'll see. You know what I'm saying? It works both ways, you know. They could always blame the detriment of certain things. For me, it's always been twofold. They see the positive development, but they also see that the convictions that I've had that cause sacrifice are intensified more. So things that I'll sacrifice in the name of this or for this, they're also magnified incredibly. You know what I mean?
When you did your 3-day fast, how did your mom feel about that?
No, I didn't. I was already old enough where people weren't caring about.
Oh, mom's lost her mind. She lost her mind. She's like, "What are you doing? You're not eating." I said, "Mama, you can't eat. You have to fast or whatever." So you can.
Remember,
and she
remember,
was like,
it was different for me, God, because I became vegan before I got knowledge of self.
Okay.
So I already shattered the world when I threw off the pork, the ham off the Thanksgiving table. That was my rebellious moment. And I was this total asshole, and I threw the ham off the table because he said, "Just eat the rice and beans," and I was like, "It's seeping into it. Juice was going in there," and I was like, "No!"
Or they put the meat in the rice and beans. They were putting
it was all in one plate, so I just was like, I threw it off, and it was the most asshole moment of my life. You know what I mean? I always had to apologize to my mom because you did cook all day for that. You know what I mean? And bought all that. I didn't buy shit. But the thing was, I did that. Once I did that, man, everything else was like, oh, okay, here we go with this shit. Now, another thing. Because I did it in increments, so. It was pork, dairy, pork, and then it was meats, the rest of them, beef, chicken, fish. So every day, it felt to them, it was like and it was also other things like, oh, I'm not eating that because that's got bad ingredients in it, you know what I mean? And like, oh, because I was getting rid of processed foods and stuff like that.
My folks, it was bad because the Puerto Rican grandmother would call the black grandma. It'd be like, he's not eating pork, right? Really? He don't eat it over here either. What we got? He's only eating cereal and greens. You know what I mean? Like I was going to, he's only eating, and then my father would come because my father's the God, right? And they never called them. They would call him as honorable. Right, and then he gets there. He goes tense with the one. He changed him. The rest of them eating, but he wants to be like this, right? And then my grandmother she says, I want to call you the name, but I can't call you the name, right? And I go, Grandma, you could call him with the name that you gave him, right? He don't go by that no more, right? And it'll be a riff. I'm second generation. So like, we're dealing with this shit again, right? And like, we're dealing with this shit again, like, and it was like, I'm like 11, 12. I'm not 13 yet. So I'm still like skin and bones. And both grandmothers, they both live in the same project. So I'm going to the 3rd floor and the 5th floor, right? And they like, everything is heavy pork. If the collard greens got pork in it, if it got this, all I'm eating is sweet potato pie, rice, and like maybe some soda. Yeah. That's all I'm eating. And then they like, and everybody else is, they just go in.
A lot of the older guys, they talked about getting kicked out of the house, so we was lucky if they even gave us a plate. I just got plastic plates though. So I got plates with gigantic mounds of rice and beans. You can feel the whole thing? These sarcastic plates, like actually like 4 or 5 scoops of rice, just like this. And mind you, I'm not big. I was mad skinny because I was being the most rebellious vegan. So I may have been like 110 pounds or some shit like that. Because I was rebellious. I didn't know what health food stores were and like that. I just like, I ain't eating nothing that I learned about is bad. But I didn't know what was good. So I just was starving most of the time. And they was just throwing like sarcastic 1-note plates on my table, and it was just ridiculous, you know what I mean? And that wasn't making me healthier because I was eating a whole bunch of white rice, I was eating a whole bunch of, you know, and the day I told them that white rice is not really the best rice,
oh my goodness, this is good.
What the hell is brown rice? You know
and how much is what brown rice?
I said, what's brown rice? And they were like, oh, so now everything has to be black. The rice has to be black. You don't like anything white. You know? And I was like, you know? Amy came home with and then when I was learning and I said, no more white bread. No, definitely no white bread. It was like, oh, there goes the white stuff again. So
you're racist.
Yeah, I was like reverse racist with them. Yeah, so it was a whole bunch of stuff. But I was already a little bit older and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So I had more leeway and shit like that. But with this now and stuff, I became more productive. You know what I mean? So even if I was in college and I wasn't working, I was coming out in magazines, I was being published and all that kind of stuff. So all these extracurricular things were coming. So what could they say? You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like I was doing worse. I was doing better.
It was harder when I went to the military. Because it's like everything is pork.
In the military.
Everything in heavy pork, right? So now I'm going so I'm in the Marines and everything is pork. And they're like, you go to boot camp. I'm eating corn, greens, and water. That's it. And I already have a big bill because my mama kind of, and I'm coming in and I'm leaving. I think went in at about 160. And I left it like 145. My father's like, yo, you want that stuff, son? And I'm like, nah, that everything is pork. And everything is pork. So what happens is that when you start walking in your journey, everything around you, diet is definitely important.
Yeah.
So whether when you visit folks, if I visit your family, whatever, and then they go to pork again, I'm like, oh no, I ate already. I'll be lying, my stomach be growling in the middle of things. And
that's why also the fasting is key too for the lifestyle. Because sometimes you have to involuntary fast in situations where you just can't get that food. You know? And again, that part was always easier for me because I got rid of dairy. I was allergic to dairy. So you kind of don't want to try stuff just in case. You know what I'm saying? So I got used to, if I'm not 100% sure it won't get me allergic, then I was okay.
Preventative.
So it was easy to get rid of. It was easy to get rid of meats because all the tasty treats and all the goodies is gone. So everything else was easy. It wasn't a problem. You know what I mean? But the fasting is crucial to developing your strength with that. So you're not a weak mind. So like you don't need the food at that moment. Because what happens? You go to a place like now it's gonna be Christmas and stuff. You might go see your family and stuff, and trust me, they're gonna give you the wrong food. Listen, you go. Oh, as soon as you're vegan. About 2-3 years ago, I ended up having chicken because they gave me a patela, and patelas are covered, right? And they got the thing inside. No, it's vegan inside. It's vegan inside. And here I go. And I'm like, I haven't had meat in 20 years. I don't know the texture anymore, because fake meats don't have that same taste. So I'm like, man, this is like badly cooked food. What is this?
Badly cooked food, damn.
Because it's all stringy and stuff. And I was like, no, you just gave me chicken. And I was like, oh, you know what I mean?
Damn.
Yeah, so
Damn,
man, I didn't cry
that's
about it.
fucked
Though.
up.
Look, the purity in this thing. You know, I was like,
And you become the butt of the family jokes. You become the butt of the family jokes.
Yeah.
Everybody teases you for a little bit.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But at one point, it becomes welcoming. Like my
Yeah.
grandma makes a special dish for me now. You know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
like it's
Right.
the whole stove, and like, here goes Ronnie's plate.
But that's the thing.
Are you the only one out your father's children that
Yeah.
yeah, he's the only one. How many brothers and sisters you have?
From physical is 3.
Okay, so
So
3
I have a
brothers.
twin sister, I have a younger sister, right?
Okay.
And then my dad adopted so many children
Okay.
because when he was a group home counselor, the incentives was that the Burks, if you're a good kid, they would adopt you. So he would adopt certain kids would get they would do well, and he would adopt them. Some would go to college, some would go to the military. Some guys that messed up and going to jail, but he would adopt them. So on paper, it's a lot. It's like almost 20 of us. You know what I mean? But from the physicals, it's 3. And I didn't know, like a lot of them, they didn't accept it. And the whole thing is that
They didn't accept the teachings, you mean?
they acknowledged it, but they're like, nah, I want to have a ham and cheese sandwich. You know what I mean? That was like they were all about taste. So the other part was that, and I always tell the guys this, I didn't really care about the black man God stuff. That didn't attract me. It was attracted at my father. Why are you taking these kids off the street, bringing them here in our house? Hey, they need a home, son. You eating right? Well, now my father was what now sounds like very nice. He'd be like, yo, if you eating and he ain't eating, we got a problem. And I was like, here you go, right? And he was teaching me these things because he was a young father, early in his 20s, really early in his 20s. And his whole thing was that I want to do what he's doing, but he's not telling me how to do it. He's just showing me. But what is the main ingredients? My uncles would be like, dude, this is what we are. Like, you gotta read this, you gotta memorize that. And my father wouldn't teach me because his whole thing was that I'm probably gonna be light on you. I'm not gonna be as hard as I'm supposed to because I'm your father. So then he sends me to the worst person, his younger brother, Rashim. He taught me. And his was like his brother, like his adversary, the brother he can't stand, is now my teacher. And this guy gave me the business. I mean, it was hard. He was kind of like you, hard, ruthless, and nurturing at the same time. And I remember just going through that regiment and him like, dude, you ain't eating until you memorize these 1 to 10. You're not eating nothing. You just gonna starve. Here's some water, right? And I'm like, And that was like the whole. What was attractive to me is this right here is why my father's doing what he's doing, and they're like, yeah, that's what made him change his name. That's what made him change as the ways that he moved. He started reading it, and just like you said, he got an understanding of the lesson. Once he got an understanding, like he's like, man, if I'm gonna what is the duty? Shit, I gotta change my ways. You know what I mean? I gotta really look inside. 17th degree is my favorite degree because after you go, 85, 10, and 5, you gotta pick your team. So how do you do that without civilization? And it's like, man, and then the next one, the building block, and then you like, man, I got to work.
That's a big point because I'm always focused on like you realizing that you are God, but a lot of people will reveal themselves as not being 5%. They're not willing to teach. They don't like teaching. They don't like the sacrifice of sharing. And I mean by the sacrifice of sharing is that you don't always get good results when you share. You usually don't get good results. You know, the majority of students or people that you share things with aren't going to take to it. You know what I mean? Your percentage is supposed to be terrible. It's not a free throw percentage. You know what I mean? It's more like a half court shot. You know what I mean? And not Curry shooting it, but Shaquille shooting it. Yeah. Because you don't have a good percentage with that. You know what I mean? And a lot of people aren't going to get it good. And a lot of people are going to get a lot of tools, but they won't really want to share it. You know? And look, even in this nation, most people in this nation are God, but they're not really 5%ers. They don't really go teach out there. You know what I mean? Or they don't make things that blatantly teach. And that's why you see justification with people. Well, I work at a place and I tell everybody at my job I'm God. Okay. Yeah, all right. You know what I mean? But those are adults and stuff, and it doesn't matter if adults bear witness to you or not. You know what I mean? You know? I was taught that the only adults you should teach are the ones that have a command over children.
you know?
Mm.
So if they have command over children or they have children themselves that they can teach and stuff like that, then it's good to teach them to be a teacher, you know? So it's always good to have a teacher brother that has kids to be a better father, to be better civilized, to be better at that, you know what I mean?
The impact of
And to change that, you know, and you change people's culture, you know? But again, it's always results driven. Everything is always results driven, you know what I mean? You always have to show that you've done something with this, so that way something changes, and that's all that has to do. You know, the thing is though, is that sometimes you become blind to the performance of things because you don't understand that the preparation is the performance. So when you're learning all these different things, like the histories and things like that, you don't realize how well-rounded this is gonna make you as an individual. That it's gonna actually prepare you to actually speak to other people about the context of life. That's what history is for, to give you a context of life and possibilities. You know, that's why we read all these books though, because there's a whole bunch of people that have already lived life. So why would we keep trying this all over again? And we start to read books by people that went through adversities and things like that, that did things, that had these abilities, or circumstances, you know what I mean? So we study all these things, you know what I mean?
Ah.
Look at like
What
what
are you charging?
Huh?
even
Yeah, yeah.
even as a 5%er, right? If we like music, we would study something of the Wu-Tang. Because people like that are people that had the knowledge and it ended, when you say, oh, he's not real, this and that, whatever you want to say, right? Wrong or incorrect, whatever. These are people that have the knowledge of
What happened?
and reach levels and places that we never actually had to have the building. Right? So how did he answer these questions? What did he do in these situations? How did he use it to build that? You know what I mean? So there's a whole bunch of case study out there. You know what I mean? The context of things. You know? Because you take the context of how a society worked, right? The Moors or the Cushites or the ancient Commissions, and then you see, well, what would it be like daily to compose something this powerful? What would have to be the way a man would live regularly in this day of life? You see? All these things come into play, and how you shape your own reality. You see? How you shape your own principles, and the fortitude that you shape them, right? And again, this time of year is, you know, they're great proving ground or experimental ground for good failure, you know what I mean? Good success, all of that. Because, you know, Christmas is even different than Thanksgiving though. It has no logical basis though. You know what I mean? A mystery god was born in a barn, and there's gonna be a barn under an evergreen tree that they decided to kill that was not going to die for another couple of 100 years, and put it inside the house though, with some Nimrod bulbs and everything to symbolize other devilishment, and celebrate the Yuletide. Yule, right? Tide meaning season, Yule meaning what? Heathen feast.
Right, Jeremiah?
Right? Savage feast. That's what Yule means. Yuletide. Right? Yule, and then you're singing Yuletide carols, right? Because the original purge is Saturnalia, the manipulated versions of ancient Egyptian rituals that become what Christmas becomes. And the Osiris myth gets renamed, and they put Jesus there being born in that. They can't have their societies just killing each other and raping everybody and destroying it. So what do? They modify the reality of Christmas to suit who? Well, how do you save anything? Save everything to the children. So they start making it a holiday for children and give candy. That becomes the first thing.
My son is like, Daddy, he's 5. Daddy, Santa Claus gonna bring you a present. I said, son, don't start that Santa Claus bullshit, right? And he's like, what you mean? I said, son, you know, because he's 5 now. He's in kindergarten, so he's starting to read. I said, when we go to the store, I buy something. Either I buy it, your mama buy it, your grandparents buy it. Ain't no fat man coming down the chimney in our house, anything. If we do, he getting shot. He don't belong here. You know what I mean? That's not the whole thing. I said, son, you want something? The irony is, all my kids are born the day before Christmas and the day after Christmas, and I don't celebrate Christmas. Right? So I got one Christmas Eve and the one day after, and they're like, hey, what kind of present am I gonna get? I'll say,
You could group them all. It's a group presents for everything, man. My born day is near Christmas, so
oh, you get
I
jerk?
always got to have some. And then I'm a twin, so I feel like some of his presents should have been mine. Like,
Oh, so he still celebrates. He still has the whole.
what?
Your twin?
He does Christmas stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
He celebrates.
I mean, is he like the polar opposite of you? Like he's like, I don't deal with that knowledge, substance stuff.
No, I gave him the knowledge of self. He
Okay.
had the whole thing. He memorized 120 and everything.
Oh, really?
So to me, he's a civilized man, you know, and like.
Right.
My
So he
sister-
knows. So he knows 120. He could quote degrees.
Oh hell no! You done forgot that already.
Oh, okay. He's all right.
That was 94. But if I speak on something, he knows where I'm coming from. If I give him an understanding, if we're watching something and stuff, like he'll see the relationship. You know what I mean? So he understands the culture. You know what I mean? But he's a civilized man. He doesn't eat pig. He doesn't eat meat. He's nearly, you know, both my siblings are near vegan. They don't eat any dairy, and they're almost always nearly, you know, meat free. You know what I mean? They might eat eggs or some shit like that. You know what I mean? But they're near.
They skip number 4 to mathematics. They're like,
They're not like that. But the thing was, I brought that culture to my family, and they added on to their way of life. You know what I mean? So they were able to add to it. You know what I mean? So it definitely changed them. You know what I mean? And it also gave them a cynicism that they needed, because to get to this knowledge of stuff from where I came from, I had to go out and get it. So I had to have a mass cynicism and disbelief in every single thing that was happening every single moment. You know what I mean? And so this was like more of a pilgrimage though. So, because it wasn't language that was in my neighborhood. You know, in Sunset Park, nobody was talking like that. You know what I mean? So I had to bring that whole thing. Nobody spoke like that, nobody thought like that. You know what I mean? So I had to be the one that was on some crazy shit. You know, the man would, you know, talk crazy because he's reading too many things, you know? But eventually, you know, even today, if I have an issue though, and I speak up a little bit too much, they're like, oh, calm down, you know? They do that shit. And I said, okay, yeah. But the thing about it though is that, you know, in this Christmas thing, the way they salvaged the holiday, because it was when the Pilgrims came here, they were savages and they outlawed Christmas, this whole Saturnalia celebration, through the children, the making of Santa Claus, and that being a story that was told, that was written in magazines, that started to proliferate, which usually was an abuse of like an old tale of like someone that had a list and was killing, right? Like the Krampus shit, right?
Right, Krampus, yeah.
Yeah, that's where it was coming from. They were manipulating that story and just making it positive. But also, one of the major things was the Christmas Carol, because now one of the concepts about supply and demand was that you got to get people to actually buy. So in that last fourth quarter, how did they get people to buy? What was perfect was the Christmas Carol was about Scrooge, who was a miser who had all the money. But he got more wealthy by being good and giving things, because he set up a culture where everybody gives. And now he got everybody buying. So now everybody's buying gifts. So basically everybody's broke now. You know what I mean? And everybody's spending. And it's just like Charles Dickens wrote that, and that became a thing where he was reading it everywhere. He went on a world tour with that joint. Like, he was reading that book everywhere. And that changed the whole reality of Christmas. That book, you know? It's monumental. That's why it's like always redone and everything like
Like
that.
the Scrooge book.
Yeah, because it gave a mentality to Christmas, the Christmas spirit, all those kind of things were not really written about until that book. You know what I mean? It's genius propaganda. It was amazing.
Well, you get it. You got past, present, future, right? They're tackling the psyche.
Right.
They're definitely going
Right.
at the
And if
psyche.
you continue to hold the wealth,
Right.
you won't have the wealth. But what happened was that he taught, by giving some of the wealth up, he taught everybody else to give up the wealth that they didn't have. It's genius.
And then they stay broke again.
Yeah.
So he blood sucked
So
them again.
everybody is spending, you know? Because Christmas today doesn't happen where like we go home in the hood and then rich white folk rain presents on us. And like, yo, the Scrooge of Marcy projects, you know? The Scrooge of Crenshaw, you know, like there's no, It doesn't happen. That's not Christmas. That doesn't happen that way. We're all blowing all of our money to get some for everybody. And the thing about it is that we say like, it's always different because you go, okay, even as like our own people, they go, look, it's the babies they all supposed to get with someone. But do you know how many babies are out there?
Mm-hmm.
Like go to your families, like not just maybe your kids or like maybe your nieces and nephews, but man, that shit multiplies though.
Yep.
I'm Puerto Rican, man. There's too many kids that I love, you know what I mean? Like, I ain't got it like that. I will run out of stuff, you know? And then you know, the way it works for me, my father is born on Christmas. He's literally born on midnight, Christmas Eve, like that, right? So I gotta get him a gift. But you can't get your father a gift without getting your old earth a gift.
Cause she gonna,
They,
she
right?
gonna put
Yeah,
that
you
on
can't be
there.
like, nah, I don't. I never could go. Yo, man, I don't celebrate no Christmas. That never happened. I couldn't do that. If I got it, I gotta give somebody. So I ended up having to get things for everybody. So who do I leave out though? My siblings though. Yeah, I ain't getting shit.
Or here's the bargain, right? The snatch to get your dollar, the Black Friday. Forget about Thanksgiving.
Right.
You got the Black Friday, and then you got the Cyber Monday, and there's still Black Friday sales going on right now. So
Yeah.
it's when I started running my household as a new parent, I was telling my wife, I say, hey, I don't want to be broke when the new year start. It's broken up maintaining the family household, but I'm not trying to be broke when the new year start. And then she has these kids. Christmas Eve, the day after, and December 22nd, right? So, and she's like, you ain't trying to go broke? Yeah, okay. Then maybe we shouldn't be fooling around, right? And I go, just honey, just, the New Year's, it shouldn't be like, yeah, we're married, and then we look at the account on the 15th, and it's like, man, we negative. You know what I mean? But we were good in that spirit, right? The spirit was good, but now, like, we gonna be eating some cornflakes for dinner, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, you know what I mean? Because that spirit was taken care of. But now financially, it's like, dude, you got the mortgage, you got the kids. My boys are still growing, so every time I look, I'm like, yo, why your pants so high? What are you talking about? And now I gotta buy another set of jeans. You know what I mean? Like they have that growth first stage. So I'm like, you want
That's what it is when the kids are small. Like you take them to school, and all of a sudden none of the shoes fit.
nothing. And then the grandparent,
It never happens like when you're not in a rush. It's when you're in a rush. It always happens.
and you remember, my dad is a jokester. My dad gives me the you don't buy your kids no clothes. What's going on here, right? And I'm like, that's the stuff you bought them. I'm buying your kids clothes and they don't fit no more. And I'm like, Dad, they just, I don't know. I wake up one morning and the clothes fit, and I get them baggy because that's where we from. We from the baggy era, and now it's baggy, but it's hot. And I'm like, I'm rolling shits up for shorts. Like I'm laughing. The older folk, like my older, because like I'm going into my 40s, and I met all my grandparents, my aunts, and stuff like that. When I came in, they were 40, and I'm looking at their logic, their parental logic, and then how they would do it. It's like Christmas, the kids are gonna get stuff, and they would look at my father. It's like you ain't nothing. But the kid, then my father got all these kids. His, and then these adopted kids, these misfits that he's bringing in, they like, yo, listen, what are you trying to kill us? You trying to kill our, but I don't want these orphans that you adopted to, my father, like, I don't celebrate Christmas, but at the same time, the parents like, but it's for the kids. And people start looking at you like, yo, dude, I like, y'all gonna have to share this DVD, y'all all watch this one DVD.
Yeah.
It started getting.
I would say this though, right? When you deal with family on Christmas or holidays and stuff, it's not about, take your ego out of it first. So don't just go teaching so that way, I'm not 85 here. Just make note. I'm not blind, deaf, and dumb here, just so you know. Right? Because sometimes you be teaching just so that you don't feel like, I feel like a savage right now. Like, 85. Find some, like, first off, if you have money, you bring something that will tell a story about like that. You know what I mean? Like something for the household or something like that, food or whatever like that says something. Also, the other thing is like, find the people in there that can learn. So like if there's a lot of children though, deal with them. Deal with the children though. Start to talk to them. If you're not good at that, then practice there. You know what I'm saying? Then you practice talking to those kids and stuff like that. Because they're your relatives. You're supposed to talk to them anyway. So,
You have to.
right? So you practice with them and share something with them about the whole thing. You know what I mean? Right?
I bought my Nerf guns. one of the nephews and nieces Nerf guns. And so we like play around the house with the Nerf guns. They don't understand that I'm trying to keep my tactical mind sharp. So how I could go into clear rooms and do stuff like that. They're learning like they can do it, but I'm staying sharp in my tactics with the youth, right? And they're like, yo, Uncle Ronnie catches everybody all the time, right? They don't know I'm playing Casamigos with them. Like I'm really training with them. And they're like, another gun. I'm like, yo, Ronnie's a cop. Come on, he's a cop. He's gonna buy cop shit for your kids, right? And the kids come over and it's like, they're like, yo, you got your Nerf guns? So now it's like almost like it's like a militia.
I always wanted one of those.
Oh man, it's like a militia in my house with the Nerf guns. It's like they reload up.
I always wanted those when I was a kid. Yeah. My father was so anti-gun that he just was like, he wouldn't do it.
And when I give the gifts for the kids, the fathers that are anti-gun, they're like, they can stay here. I'm like, oh really, Theo? That's what we doing? Yeah, it can stay here. But they love it. You know what I mean? It's a good. As long as you don't get jerked. We know not to get jerked and bamboozled.
Please go.
Please.
Yeah, it's about that. You know?
We on?
But your brothers is young though, so it's mainly how you interact. You
got the
know,
moment?
it's really how you interact with the family.
What are you talking
I
about?
was asking him to buy that hoodie, but he said he's gonna look for it for me.
Oh, yeah, you got a large up over there?
But yo,
You
we're
right
past
now?
10 o'clock. Is there any questions?
Come back. I'm gonna build you. I need to build you anyway though.
Oh, just like I'm gonna email you later, but what
Please.
did you say at the beginning to the research on cosmology and also the beginning of the birth of the devil?
Yeah, email me. I'll give you some.
Oh, you gonna ask for? All right. You know what I say? Be careful what you ask for. You about to get it.
Just a couple of books.
Just a couple. You're gonna be needing glasses in a minute. You're gonna be needing me. And reading list is intense, bro. Reading list is intense.
Well,
Yeah.
okay.
But
So
email me so I can start giving you stuff like curriculum and all that kind of stuff.
You ready?
with that, I'm gonna say
ready?
peace.
You think he wear glasses because he wants
That's
to?
all. Peace. Peace.
That's that Malcolm X stage. You're like, oh man.
Already can't see a lot of context on him.
Look, as soon as I be reading 3 books at the same time. It's like, this book is cool.